I think the first thing is that that we have a caring society. I think that's the first thing. I think that we have a caring, supportive society.
And but everybody being there for each other, which was really, I think, the most important thing. So even if not everybody's in the best place, but if people are there for each other, that makes all the difference.
The other thing is we have to be more careful with our relations. So we have to be careful with other people's feelings.
I think it's just being more thoughtful, taking more time to talk to people, even if we are busy, to recognize the value of people.
I think we've got a really special community. We've been through something incredible over the past 3 or 4 months, and I would hope that could continue as it's been, in terms of we feel we can work together, we can do things together.
I think more kindness and people taking more time and the dropping of the timetable, and I think focusing on other people a bit more than yourself.
Kindness, I think, coming back to caring, supportive society. And we've got a real opportunity on the Isle of Man, I think, for it can be whatever we want, can't it?
From a government perspective, I see the community spirit. It's been self-evident during the crisis, and I hope that will continue. I think the Isle of Man's always been a fairly neighbourly, friendly place, but it has definitely brought out the best in a lot of people. So it would be really nice for that community volunteer type spirit to continue.
Recapturing more of our lives for leisure and pleasure and community activity for ourselves and for other people.
It would be a quieter, gentler, slower island, I think.
I would do more activities to integrate the community. Now that people is wanting or actually enjoying that kind of things.
A better understanding between different groups of people with different interests, and I've identified some people who have to work more because their jobs are less remunerative, people who move to the island through choice rather than people who've got more of their family here, older people and younger people, because it's hitting you more than it is pensioners and older people.
And I think I would like to see more events. I would like to see more people getting together for stuff.
It's a culture of embracing new ideas, new people, and new ways of doing things, but with that strong cultural foundation and thread of that humbleness, that accountability, that transparency, and that trust that if someone needs help, you go help.
We definitely have lots of dancing, singing, playing, rediscovering collective joy with, strangers and friends.
Yeah, as I think it's going back to that individual, that individuals have got to hopefully believe they can become part of the larger group again, that they may only be one individual, but together they become a community.
I'd like to see us all helping each other, considering each other a lot more.
My hope is that we learn to embrace more neighborliness, more caring.
Not just is it, I mean, not just have we slowed down and we're mindful, continue to be mindful, not just that we want to, appreciate and protect our clean air and our clean water and, and all the life we share the planet with, but really that at our core, we understand how we all just are connected.
Here we are, we're on the planet for a small amount of time. Maybe this has been a way for people of a younger age in particular to look at how your life could actually be a lot better.
The problem with talking about the environment has always been, it's too big for the individual. And COVID has actually shown us that that is not the case, that it's not too big for the individual, that an individual can make a massive impact.
The Isle of Man is so amazingly lucky and fortuitous in this way that we are a contained community, so we perhaps can be considered and measured about our restart.
And the other thing I would really like is that people can change. I think in life you can get into a rut, you can get into a situation and you can just stick with it. And what lockdown did for all of us to varying degrees was it changed things.
I mean, I really see this as a possible chance for us to absolutely fundamentally change our behaviours.
The one thing that we should not lose is the opportunity to go back to something that was not normal before, but is the so-called new normal. But rethinking how we use stuff, whether we actually need to go and buy 5 years supply of toilet paper because somebody sneezes. These kind of things we have. Maybe we've got enough of the population to start thinking what we were doing before didn't really make a lot of sense. Let's carry on with some of the things that we've learned. And if we can do that with even 10% of the population, that will gradually multiply over the next few years.
So in a perfect world, I just think we'd be free to be ourselves, free to enjoy and live and work as with all of the good things of our island, our culture, our nature, and all the history just there, that we aren't sort of copying anybody else or trying to be anything else.
Another thing that would be nice, wouldn't it, if life was just a little bit slower sometimes, to give us the opportunity to think and to plan.
From that aspect, what we can do, I think we need to do things a bit slower, and certainly, the holidays and things like that obviously are going to come at a later date.
But at the same time, I wish and I hope I can manage to keep the way I've learned about me. Also, have time to take my tea and enjoy it, actually, not just drink it because there is tea or coffee or whatever. or have the time to enjoy a conversation. If someone tells me, how are you? I will actually, or if I say to someone, how are you? I want to actually listen how they are. And it's not just a question like, oh yeah, how are you? Yeah, bye. That kind of things. I hope we can like stop being so running all the time and so fast all the time.
I would like to see that when we have a nice day, that people are out enjoying it.
People having the time to spend with family, I think that's really important.
I'd have to stay the centre on the family. I think we've got to get back to those more basic family activities of, you know, growing a little bit of veg in a garden or something, or just taking time together to go on a bike ride or something like that.
I think there's been an absolute flourish of people picking up painting and writing and photography and music or other kind of sides of things. And actually, I mean, one of the very simple methodologies we use at work is the 5 ways to well-being, and one of them is being interested and playing and having that space, mental space to kind of explore. And I think that's a fascinating island utopia after this, is giving people time to follow their pursuits and their passions and their hobbies.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the few things that I could wish for is that that we could try and come closer together as a community, that we could sort of try and shed some of the bad habits that we have as a society around some of the wastefulness of the way that we are.
I think from the mental health of the people who live here, it's got to be a place they feel is very connected to them and they're connected to. And you do that by getting to know it better.
This notion that we must always consume and buy new things and update and upgrade, kind of slightly shifted in our behaviours. So let's consume information, let's consume ideas, and let's consume creativity and make stuff,
But I think for the whole, people are saying, you know what, I can live without shopping for a new top, or I can live without. And I think people are actually understanding that they don't need all this stuff.
I think we would replace buying stuff with doing stuff. So instead of kind of randomly wandering down Strand Street, we would be out doing things with our families.
It's a great potential possibility of us to kind of move away from this rat racy kind of life to that kind of really beautiful notion of live local, think global.
Using technology in a sort of savvy way to make life less, there's less scurrying about all the time for people to be moving all the time, but there's more opportunities to kind of revisit things.
Well, I think a big one for me is automation of jobs, because increasingly we're seeing jobs being completed by machines.
And this is one of the things that I think lockdown has shown with modern technology, that yeah, we can be isolated in one sense, but we can be even more connected in another sense. Because it doesn't matter if you're sitting in your pajamas at 10 o'clock at night, talking to somebody, you're still having that, you can still maintain that contact. And I think that's opened up a whole lot of things.
I think if we manage to automate all these jobs, we can then focus on more important things, like our own lives, our own development, our own progression, our own enjoyment.
The idea of Zoom
Zoom calls and everything else, it is a huge step for the business world.
You know, the sustainability and, you know, to letting nature kind of take its course to support us too, versus us trying to find all these other ways to make things better, you know, when we really aren't. I mean, we're looking at things like, okay, how would we, this might sound gross, how will we process urine, you know, more efficiently into clean drinking water? I mean, we're already doing that on the station now, but how can we make that even more compact and more, you know, efficient and effective? And they're actually looking at mechanical systems that mimic what nature does, what our kidneys do, what our, you know, in ways that the earth, through filtering through mangroves and things like that, creates clean water.
So local stone and local wood would make a much better, you know, like traditional buildings would make more sense straight off.
Yes, looking to the future, I can't see any impediment except cost, of course, and there's always an element of cost involved in these things, that won't lead us to a greener form of energy production. And we're wind rich here, we're tidally rich, so why wouldn't we exploit those resources to bring a greener, cleaner future?
You stimulate the economy by moving forward at the same time. Moving forward means, okay, we're going to redesign society, and one of the big things would be how we get our energy, because energy is the key to everything, you know, from food to what we wear, to whether staying warm or cool, to getting around.
Well, I've always thought that England are very into wind power and windmills, and I just don't understand why we've not done the same.
Well, I think the island is resilient in many spheres already. In fact, you know, we generate our own power, and hopefully that will be a greener form of generation going forward.
And I'd like to see us recognise that we have tremendous capacity to produce energy in this island. I'd like to see us harness our wind, and I'd like to see us harness our seas to power our own society.
One concept I have is that we label everything with what the carbon footprint is off, whether we're buying clothes or producing, you know, or food.
If we do get greener energy, we're going to, with electric cars, we're going to clean up our towns, and we'll clean up our heating, as it were, and our emissions will drop. We'll be in a better place generally for the whole population.
Surely there must be some way of developing a way where we can harness the energy of the sea.
I mean, we have great green resources.
The key issue, though, is a just transition, because it's very easy for people that are in good jobs to afford this transition, but we need to bring, as I said earlier, the whole of society with us. So it's got to be a just transition.
Education is critical, so that's both, that's learning, training, teaching, however you want to look, but it's also research.
Schools as the one-size-fits-all model of delivery has proven to be not really the best model.
Something that I think I would like to see continue is young people taking the responsibility for their learning. and realizing that they have a role to play in their own learning.
I really hope collectively we can have a readdress of what schools actually mean to young people.
In terms of people realizing their self-goals and their achievements that are possible, I think we need to have a more active mentoring system on the Isle of Man. You know, if you wanted to make a big decision in terms of your career, then possibly there need to be more alternatives. Perhaps there needs to be a more comprehensive mentoring system.
One of the things that I've picked up on since is we really need to get the remote schooling in a good place, and actually not just for COVID-19, but because there's children all year round who can't access school for a whole host of reasons, be they physical health, mental health. And I absolutely think if we can get a really good offering in terms of remote schooling, then it will help us year round for those children who can't attend school, but it will also mean that we've got the resilience should something like this happen in the future.
Remote learning, virtual learning, all of that came together in such a short time. And we need to keep some of that, because there are children and young people who school is not the best place for them. And so those moves forward we've made in virtual and remote learning, we need to progress that, develop it further.
So I would love also to develop more programs in education that are focused more in that social skills. Well, I think now they call them soft skills, like how to communicate, how to interact with other people. I would love to see more of that, because I think parents now understand that it's more important play with your kid than actually make an amazing activity to learn math. And at that moment I thought, why don't you teach your kids how to cook, or how to I don't know, clean, or how to take care of a plant? That's also learning.
I think schooling, learning, education, information it's about growing as a human being.
Big thing obviously is about English and understanding and being critical thinkers, and actually bringing our children up to critically read things rather than just read things.
You need a GCSE in history to get a job, or do you need to be a mature, confident, articulate young person?
We will build sustainability institutes that are allied to the best and brightest universities. We want to come here and establish here because people could come and work, absorb the ambience of the island, as well as contributing in kind of little think tanks and training areas.
But also, there's all these islands and small nations around the world that are now struggling with the same problem we are. So if you can also get, other countries involved which have the same problems and research the, efficient ways of doing this, that's the way, again, I see, you can do research and training and advising then governments and businesses.
After this, or if I was in charge, I would really love the Isle of Man to be more green, more environmentally friendly, and I really think it's going that way.
I just think it's lovely to see that nature actually does exist, because I think in a busy world, you just forget it's there, don't you? And I love the fact that nature seems to have taken a forefront.
And I think that this has forced us into this, actually making some drastic changes that will help so many things in terms of, you know, a greener lifestyle and sustainability.
People have rediscovered the Isle of Man from an exercise point of view, the countryside, getting out there on their bikes or whatever, just walking around. And I think some people will probably have been surprised at what the Isle of Man has to offer in the way of a beautiful environment.
I think the valuing of the nature, I think that thing where you go out in your garden and because there's no cars, you can hear birds and you can hear insects and things that you'd never taken, you didn't have the time, but also there was all the other distractions.
Really being able to enjoy nature, and I think and seeing the people take over the streets, I thought that was just fantastic.
My utopia was heavily linked to sustainability, but I think we perhaps need to reset our idea of what sustainability means. It shouldn't be a word that turns us off. It should be something that is just like oxygen. It's something we need.
My island utopia would probably be one where we have a very green economy. We have good atmospheric quality. We have clean land, rubbish-free seas. At the end of the day, people were healthy and wealthy, perhaps is the expression.
I would, in my ideal world, there'd be the old trees would still be here, and I'd just roam amongst them.
A sustainable island that isn't sucking out all of the life out of the earth, if you sort of mean, but a sustainable island that actually is almost at peace with the earth, putting as much in as it's getting out, if you sort of mean. And I think if that is something that we can have, where we sort of tolerate each other and so forth, and actually celebrate all the differences we have, that would be, in my world, utopia.
I think we have to respect more the nature.
I think we should have sustainable, profitable agriculture. We should have, wide hedgerows. We should have more, we should have native wildlife protected. We should have people engaging more with nature, and through that they become advocates and champions of it.
I think taking care of our environment, I think, is something that, I think the time that we had where more of us were able to enjoy the environment, to get out and go for those walks, that people really continue to appreciate what a beautiful place we live in.
I think there are three core areas. The first one is the biosphere. I think that needs to be central to everything. I think it's something that's been recognised as something that we've got, but we take it for granted. And I feel we need to really take that forward.
And there's still too much emphasis, to my mind, on birds and marine mammals. And we kind of forget all the rest of the biosphere that allows these top of the pyramid creatures to exist. And that's what we need to focus on.
We try so hard to manage stuff, to come up with the alternative to what nature can do for us. And we really have to go back to looking at, nature was put there for a reason, to help us deal with these things without having to manipulate it.
I would like to see a lot more allotments and homegrown food, and perhaps people working together in cooperatives to grow food locally, but also the local agricultural industry really being set up to look after us and create food for us locally, perhaps not so bothered about export, and certainly us not being so reliant on stuff coming in.
So I think there's a few key things that I would have. One of them would be a fully self-sufficient food chain for the Isle of Man, and really investing and supporting our local economy.
I have allotments. My allotment has never looked so fantastic. It is bursting with vegetables, and it also made me think about, whilst this is something I do alongside working and all the busy stuff that you do, the shopping and all that nonsense, I have been saying for a few years, I want to make it pay. I want it to sustain me, you know, moving forward for the future. I'm kind of like, I am going to make this be as self-sufficient as possible.
The production of food and the use and the so eating and growing your own food and eating your own food and everything that goes into that whole journey of planting a seed and then being able to put it on your plate, I think is a really great one.
For me, it'd be better if we didn't actually get meat from a supermarket and everyone went out and hunted their own meat, because then they would understand the connection. I don't eat a huge amount of meat myself, but I think it's nice if you can get it locally.
I think what has happened during lockdown is that people have been using local resources much more, and I think I don't care if the milk that Tesco imports from somewhere else is cheaper. We must buy local milk.
You know, really get up our game in terms of supporting local fishermen, farmers. I think there's such great produce here, and yet it's become just too easy to go and buy stuff that's imported.
And I think we need to stop eating green beans that come from Africa, you know, when we can grow green beans on the Isle of Man.
I think the buying local is a no-brainer in that regard. We can reduce our the miles, food miles that we're travelling, reduce carbon emissions.
On an island as well, if you're eating meat, eating the meat that's farmed on the island is so important.
You know, that's why we need to rethink. We need to help the agricultural industry to become more environmentally friendly by choosing more carefully what we buy, choosing foods that come from sustainable sources, don't come from the other side of the world, that are farmed in sustainable ways, but also growing more of our own.
We would have low food miles. People would appreciate the value of locally produced produce. Our farmers would, you know, farming would become one of the cornerstones of our economy again.
More connection, positive connection with what's around us in terms of biodiversity, just nature more generally.
And I really hope the green spaces of the Isle of Man stay green, and we take care of our beaches, and the kind of fields and green spaces aren't built upon.
Here we've still got, to a large extent, the original field patterns, and that provides, habitat and connectivity between the habitat patches and so on. We're a really good example of how to do that.
If you add in our Banks Wildlife Trust nature reserves, and then you add in, really nature encouraging public spaces, and then you take some of the other big landscape projects on, then you get to the farmland, and you imagine, we have a wonderful stat. I think Isle of Man has got more hedgerows per acre than anywhere else, certainly compared to the UK. But maybe we should have even more. Maybe we should set our bar even higher, or make them the widest hedgerows, and so we actually encourage more of that, and that would be in itself beautiful.
I think people would be out in all sorts of weathers, enjoying the outdoors and the environment.
The Wildlife Trust movement that was probably set up, 100 and odd years ago to protect spaces and have nature reserves. That doesn't mean that that's not still a fundamentally important thing that we do, but we have to look beyond our nature reserves now, because if we can influence the other 99.98%, then we can do massively important things. I don't see Biosphere being bad for anyone. We're not trying to con someone and get them to pay more money for a property. We're promoting something that's good for everyone, that's inarguable. So that makes me sleep well. I never fancied being a car salesman.
We'd celebrate the natural world so much more. We'd have so much more of an understanding of our place in that balance.
But I think one of the beautiful things about the Isle of Man is the nature. And I think if we grasp that, it could be such an amazing tourist destination and a proper little utopia, that's separate and feels so like an Arcadia.
Where should we? Let's start in people's back gardens. I went to a wonderful garden open day at the weekend, and it's a gardener's garden. It's got all these little rooms and all these beautiful plants as well, but it's an absolute microcosm of things for nature. Imagine if every garden you went in had a little bit of that, artistic flair, but also enhancing wildlife and nature. Imagine the potential impact that could have across the whole of that, what I'd call, or what others would call, a green lace across the island.
I would love to see more trees being planted. I would love for us to have more information about what are the right plants to put in your garden, and not fill it up with exotic things that have been brought in from somewhere else.
But I'm not here talking about adding more nature reserves. I think we need less nature reserves. We need to have everybody understanding that the whole island is a nature reserve, and it's their responsibility to keep that nature alive, functioning and future-proof, because it's our future-proofing, in fact, against our adaptation to climate change that's already baked in.
How long have humans been on this planet? How many generations? How far are we from the original baseline of what wildlife should be out there? And we know things are going extinct all the time, and it's massively sad. And that's one of the reasons why I work in conservation, is to try and sort of turn that around. But we're only going to do that if everyone understands the issue of what we're losing in terms of wildlife and nature.
Yeah, it's a living thing. Our island, and it's a living organism. We have to protect the body as well as the spirit of it.
I think the Isle of Man can be a fantastic place to experiment with nature. We can grow a whole bunch of things here. We could bring a whole range of plants that are under threat in their native habitat and grow them in gardens. Yeah, okay, it's not the same thing, but if what you want is those genes and those species to survive, we have to think outside the box of we need a bigger national park. No, you don't, because there's no room anymore. We have to think differently.
I'd love the sort of research you see at the moment going into trying to find a vaccine for COVID. going into how do we try and treat these diseases that are coming into our trees?
I'm not a social scientist, but the more I get involved in conservation, I come to the conclusion that actually the ecologists and the marine biologists and the botanists are not the key to conservation. The key to conservation are all the other people on the planet.
I really think we need to start thinking about our planet as our life support system. You know, that is the thing we have in common, and that we all need to start acting like crewmates instead of passengers.
Unless we value our island and our culture, we can't understand, or we won't have a full understanding of the need to value our environment as well. I think they're all very interlinked.
I will give more recognize to the different cultures that we can find in here.
But I just love to see more expression of who we are, you know, the protest and pride festivals and more celebrations of diversity, even though that the Isle of Man isn't the most diverse place.
People gathering in a space to share their culture is a lovely, and everybody loves going to those events. Everybody loves going to the food fair. Everybody loves going to the carnivals. Having more opportunities for people to get together and do stuff together as a community, I think would just be lovely.
And I think we all need to remember why this island is so special, and we need to advocate for it. You know, when people come and visit the place, there's a charm that they fall in love with, and that's not just the things to do, that's the people. You know, and the people make the island, and I think it's an incredibly welcoming, hospitable place, and people want you to come and enjoy the Isle of Man.
But obviously, what I would add is, you know, lots of music and art, and you know, a place of people doing things, if you see what I mean, and mostly sunny as well.
I suppose, dare I say it, TT. I've kind of enjoyed not having it.
I'd like to see more art going on. That's something I would like to see, more art exhibitions or galleries.
Local crafters took a real opportunity to make things that struck a chord over the rainbow theme, key workers. Then there was this sudden rise of the local gifts, and I thought that's what we should have been supporting for so long.
I think regenerating the culture through increasing use of Manx is amazing.
And I think more of the national sites could be made of, you know, like Cregneash and House of Manannan and things, because it's so important to educate people on the Manx culture and the language as well.
I'd like to see actually some return to some of the things that we used to do. You know, we've got some really cool little traditions over here, and it would be lovely to see people embracing those instead of buying in traditions from overseas. It would be nice to see Hopchine instead of Halloween, and the celebration of the really cool little traditions that we have in the island, because most of them are fab and fun and things that people can do together.
The opportunity to regenerate Manx culture and assert Manx culture, perhaps as part of a broader Celtic cultural revival. The Isle of Man can lead in that because it's different. It's not tied to anything. So using and asserting our independence, I think, is really important.
But making sure that we actually sort of wave it around in people's faces a bit more, the fact that we are different, some of the differences, some of the history, some of the way that we do things, that is something that is really, really important.
Our appreciation for the conservation of our environments has to be part of our culture. So we have to recognize that the two can't exist without each other.
Being Manx should be a state of mind, and it should be a state of heart. It should not be a birth certificate. Why can't everyone walk safely home from school? Why can't everyone get fed? Why can't everyone see a doctor? Why can't everyone talk to their political representative and live in a democracy? And everyone have a chance at culture and art and work?
My ideal is that we all have a home that we can enjoy and that is up to standards that we should all expect.
So my vision is that we have a fair settlement between the generations, as well as between richer and poorer, and as well as between people who understand that leisure time and pleasurable time is important.
So my dream has always been to be able to live in peace.
We need children to grow up with views and opinions and be listened to.
And encouraging diversity on the island, and somewhere that everyone and everything is welcome.
Taking away that fear for some families of where maybe universal basic income. Hey, let's go really radical.
We definitely need to be more kind of caring towards those. That's the sort of that element of society that struggle.
I don't know, maybe more of a safety net to allow people some freedom to express themselves.
I would love to see more justice in the world, You look at the United States at the moment and what's happening there, and that's lack of justice. We should have not just respect for the trees and nature, as I love, and the ocean, but for people.
I think one of the things I'd like to see is that we get rid of all homelessness and kind of work together and make sure that we've got enough for everybody. I mean, there is enough for everybody in this world if we just shared it out more carefully and more thoughtfully.
Basically a more equal and fair society, where we don't see each other as upper class, lower class, working class, and we don't see each other as our ethnicity, or sexual orientation or gender identity or anything like that, and we just are united as one, and we just focus on making the world better.
I would like to see more sharing of resources.
I think it's recognizing that life is dependent on like an equitable distribution of the resources that the planet has. And respecting that the planet does have ways to support that for us if we respect it.
Cars are almost eradicated. That would be my ideal kind of thoughts.
And that would be brilliant if people realise they don't need a car.
Ai, son y trer y hit, tam I smwniach dyn, dylid eich slai trolt yn sach share, lydych eich smwniach dyn mych iawn yn eich trolt. As yn sy'n ei goler etlyn, fod I goler bedd na tren, as dyn gol chyffordd y sŵl. Eliau slai ty gafrach, dyn nhw delal as eliad, hanniw ei goler etlyn just son sych da kweltis ons tir elia, adach sy'n dyn nhw sy'n Skype as eliad, as di sywel wy'n yn cana as anelu dyn nhw addi dyn chimotach. Sian rhaid am ysyn wedyn.
In terms of, re-engineering a new vision for the future, I suppose what I did quite like the idea of having fewer cars on the roads. I've always been a bus traveller anyway, but I did notice that there were more people out and about cycling during lockdown rather than driving. And I think certainly the stories have come back that people felt safer on the roads when there were fewer cars about.
We would have this amazing green system of public transport that's efficient and clean and reliable and gets us to where we need to go without us having to rely on our cars, and it would be safe for us to get around on bicycles and for us to ride our horses and for us to go for walks.
One of the things I'd love to see in my utopia is actually a restoration of the railways. Keep the steam train, obviously. I'm not suggesting we go back to steam again, apart from the nice historic bit. But run it with solar-powered rail cars, small rail cars that actually connect the little villages. That means you can take some of the diesel buses off the roads, and you'd have a good public transport system and a fantastic tourist system.
I also feel like, and this is my off-the-wall idea, I suppose, is that it would really be great if there was some way you could travel in some sort of protected bubble and still go and see the world when things like this happen.
Baliam Fagan and Elian, Smoniten Nasmu Machan Trolt, Lectrach, Arach Electrach, Masample, other holy in a bruisen by Lectrach, other an Elian, Lidale and Red on the tail, son Hanel Famex slide Trolt via father, and Elian Jaw, another, which an other holy in a bruisen by Lectrach, other Nasmu, Glacier and Lectrach by Magiet, as other and Bun Trogelus by on the Hunalish slide by Eche. As Ginu Image, Meridian Lectrach Shaw, Shannon Rid Tommy Smith and Little Man and Ginu.
Now, I am convinced, from the Royal Aeronautical Society's point of view, that they will think very, very carefully about the aviation industry and how it progresses from here, and what has it learned, and will we go back to the point of thinking about very high and very fast? And if we do, what are the propulsion methods going to be? Because if we rely on fossil fuel, then we're going to be in trouble.
I think the fact that you've got all these airplanes now sitting on the ground doing the equivalent of rusting is really interesting, and they're clearly never going to come back to where they were. But there is still a demand for people to move around, and there is now the opportunity, instead of building more metal-based, gas-guzzling, even biofuel-guzzling planes, to actually build, again, go back to the airship era, but fit them with solar panels and Wi-Fi. And so instead of trying to get faster from A to B, you take a bit longer, but you're always in contact.
What I'd like to see come out of it is that we don't have 3-4 trips to the foreign countries every year because we can afford it. We have stay-at-home holidays that appreciate what we've got here.
I think this is it. We've got to kind of reset our perceptions, because staycations might be the thing that we'll be doing in the future. There's a part of me that thinks, can we rethink politics in this day and age? You know, is contemporary government really fit for purpose?
There are a lot of things that I think this pandemic has thrown up that will hopefully make the world think more clearly about what it needs to do.
In this ideal world, we don't measure GDP and income. We measure empathy, global empathy, quality of life. We make our decisions using that information.
Well, I believe in politics. I believe in representative democracy, and I believe that representative democracy is best when it's informed. So I welcome this sort of project. I welcome people writing down on a postcard what their vision is, and then I welcome civil servants and activists and stakeholders and interest groups actually putting down fleshed out proposals.
No, I really like the idea of the people taking it back, you know, the people power.
I mean, long term, there's actually a role for the Isle of Man and some of the Crown dependencies, but I think the Isle of Man particularly because of where it is geographically in the Irish Sea, to be a source of new thinking, if you like, about how the British Isles, and I include the Republic of Ireland here, how the British Isles can manage its way into the next decades and even century.
Supporting certain industries by making sure that there are clean, green alternatives, and the money is directed in those ways rather than in traditional ways.
I would say that the Isle of Man is ideally placed to have a fantastic human rights record.
And that's the other thing, the other fascinating thing about the lockdown, and in fact the whole pandemic, as it now is, because the world is so connected, is it's shown into sharp relief the fiction about money. Suddenly, from a period of austerity when we couldn't actually spend anything, There's more money than you've ever seen being thrown at, paying people to stay in jobs.
I would love to see an Isle of Man that doesn't measure itself by GDP, measures itself by something like the happiness index, the wellness index, something like that.
I'm trying to wind up that England and Wales have very good law relating to children. The Isle of Man has very good law relating to children, but very poor implementation of that law. And I would be delighted in the future to see some change in that attitude.
I hope that although the island's done tremendously well, and we should be so proud of that, I hope that it doesn't create an insular nation. And I think that the island, I would love for it to be able to continue pushing everything that it can be proud of globally and across the world, and encourage and continue to encourage global links to the island.
You know, think big on a small island. And why can't the rest of the planet be the Isle of Man?
Fodmid Lotrish na nebu na nine, Lochtayan, as Jinu Shiga de Valtin, Curliari Tre, the Lotrish and Lochtayan, Zoom as Skype as written Mashan, Shen written Yach, Nims Jinu on the Tre, hits on Shigaras.
Well, I think, you know, there's a lot of things that we can all practically do. I mean, number one, rethink how you can make your life better.
I think as consumers, we have a responsibility to exert consumer pressure.
By doing a few very simple things which change your life and your habits, you can actually make the planet a better place, and you will be a better person for it.
I think business, from a point of view of social responsibility, recognizing their role in being socially responsible businesses, and encouraging others to do the same.
To have like a research project that asks people to really think about what their experience is and have it analysed to see what people really think and what people really feel and what makes people really happy.
So I think we maybe need to give the population opportunities where they feel confident enough to continue the change that they've started.
I think it's trying to say to people, it is possible. Look what we did.
If everybody feels that they have a voice or they have a space in here, is more likely to take care more of everything and start working in that sustainability and in that support and that friendly economy for the island and the friendly approach.
Let people feel that they're empowered, that they can make a change, that their opinions do matter.
So I think it's individuals to some extent sticking to their game, you know, and saying, well, this does suit me. This is the way that I want to work. organisations and companies and charities and employers and whatever else being receptive to it.
Government should lead on this, I think, and a great message to send out to the rest of the world, not just the Isle of Man. You know, this can be done.
I think having an understanding through education, through the third sector, you know, the charitable sector, stepping up and taking an education and a communication role.
Ach bentyn leis na feisten múre garish cachle and aircha ons an alien rydyn lectrach as a yet. Saint a shen chit by an realtis. Ach saint ding in ginste an realtis cretash in lala di ynu. Ach fod mich cachle rydyn beg ons na bacon ein hien hojach.
Leadership. If our political leaders do not seize the opportunities that they've now got to change the way in which we operate and to move forward, then we are going to fail.
We could all just start voting for politicians who defend nature. Don't vote for ones who don't. I think that would be an amazing place to start.
I like the idea of how governments talk about the new normality. So that gives you already an idea that, yeah, things are not going back, we're just going forward.
To grasp your idealism, that I think is something which we have got to do, because idealism is the embryo of change, is it not?
Tra Julian, Yuri Shikin.